What's up, people? Welcome back to another properly fashioned video. Today, I don't know why I said video like that, but today I have a few ideas that I wanted to share with you if you're a student studying design, whether it's fashion like I did, um, or anything similar design-wise. These tips are going to apply to you. It's something I wish I heard when I was in school not so long ago, and could have helped me along the way, make me a better student, a better designer, quicker, but also had more fun and less burnout along the way. Because as we know, that's the most worst, one of the worst things, apart from getting rejected from company after company, um, in this industry. So, without further ado, I have my old sketchbook, which is not particularly great, but I wanted to show you anyways and share some tips along the way with how to get something like this. Okay, that's a bad example. This into the final product like that. Um, so I'll show you some of those things that I've worked on, and what you could take away is what you can take away, which doesn't make any sense, but let's get to it. I'm going to flip this to the sketchbook and I'll see you there. All right, so welcome to the sketchbook. This was halfway through my senior year of thesis, so January 2024. And so this is kind of my fashion sketchbook mixed in. If you don't know, I kind of got into accessories, especially handbag design, near the end. Um, so that's kind of where I'm going right now. But I did study fashion design at Parsons, the new school here in New York City, for my bachelor's degree. And so, this is still like an amalgamation of my whole year, my whole time during school studying fashion. So, this is going to apply to you if you're a designer. I mean, it's not a great sketchbook. It's very rough. Some pages here are going to be more sketchy than others. You got some like anatomically bizarre looking people, but you could see how what I'm trying to show is how some ideas progress, and how you could get from an idea, as you saw those first few pages, into closer to a more polished version of what you want to go forward with your design. This ended up being one of the jackets that I made that I showed in the beginning. So it's just a leather jacket, very inspired by like those shoulders that kind of pop out, kind of like how a jaguar, when it crawls to creep up on its prey, it's kind of got its shoulders going forward. Um, Not thinking too hard about that. Obviously, kind of, my rough idea is thinking about the main idea of the garment or whatever it is I'm designing, and then just going from there. So that's my first tip, is to not look for the style, just kind of be lazy. Design comes out when you're just grooving along. This is some bags. But yeah, so once I came up with that sketch, I made a first version of it. This is the toile. And that's where you could kind of figure out, okay, this proportion is incorrect here. I wanted to bring it in a little bit more over there, so I just drew on top of it. A very art school type of thing. People go crazy for that. I mean, it looks like you're thinking a lot. Really, you're like, oh, let me just emphasize this a little bit more and add some crease lines here, and then draw some, like crease lines there, and oh, that looks so much better. But it does kind of help you out sometimes. I don't use this technique that much. This is more to like kind of be pretentious and, show like this is kind of what it is, and then you kind of add some of the details that you're going to add for the final product. But, figuring a lot of, for me, this process is just thinking about the design technically, thinking about it in like how far these buttons are placed apart. This for me was a Fibonacci sequence. So it was like 1, 1, 2, 3. Am I doing that right? Yeah. So that's what these button placements were. Very nature inspired, because Fibonacci occurs a lot in nature. And then, going on to something else. So first thing is design really comes from just being lazy. In my opinion, at least, it's just doing things correctly over and over and over. And then once you get to the point where you're super tired and you're like making lines that you're used to making, and drawing shapes that you're really used to making, that's how you kind of find your style. So if you could take anything from that, it's don't force it too much. Like most of my time in school, I was really thinking about, oh man, this is looking really like how do I perfect all of these things? When in reality, it's like you kind of just don't. You just keep doing it over and over, and then you'll realize that something is coming up of nothing. I don't know. He's holding a flag. Like it really is that simple, but you just have to put in the practice and the repetitions, kind of like lifting. So another design, kind of, the next thing I wanted to add was, or the next tip is to organize your life. During a lot of this, you'll see like little bits of me writing down where is it? The one time I want to talk about it. So this is me designing some bags. We'll skip over that for now. Probably talk about that in a different video. I'm going to save that for later. But organization, you'll see in a lot of this, I draw a design out and I figure out like, how can I make this simpler in my head so then I don't have to always reference this picture when I'm putting it to pattern. This is me figuring out what a rough pattern of this design would be. So if you sew all these pieces together, if you sew like for this part goes to this part, and this part goes to this part, and this part goes to a flipped image of that, and then this part goes to this part, I believe, something like that. You'll see like to-dos. I'm just figuring out what I have to do for the next step, because you're working with 5 different looks at the same time during our thesis, at least. And so each look is like a top, a bottom, an accessory for me, or like a top, a jacket, a vest, a pant, so it could kind of get a lot. Plus on top of that, you got your personal life, you got to figure out your other classes. So best case scenario, try to take everything and kind of lay it out as best you can. I was never great at organizing myself, but you could see I really had to force myself to, because you only have 24 hours in the day. You're working at school for 16 hours a day most of the time. You really got to make those times count, because if you don't, you're going to fall behind, and that's not fun, because then you can't go out on the weekends, and then you just get more miserable and miserable. True story. Didn't happen to me, but it happened to a lot of people. Actually, it did happen to me. I'm lying. So over here, kind of figuring out that like final lineup for the thesis. Very ghostly drawing. There's no like heads or anything. It's just very ominous. It's very avant-garde. It's yeah. But that's when I add all the pieces of what I have so far, because I design my looks differently. Some people have a story. Some people are more storytellers when they design. Some people are more philosophical. They're trying to tackle this one idea and show it through different looks. I'm a storyteller. I love to. So this is a story that I wrote, and each look is a character in that story. Another version of like that same jacket with the pants to go with it now, and a little scarf that I made as well. And then, just figuring out some other ideas. This was a tote bag to go with that look, or a different look. So great little thing there. But yeah, I would say the reason, and so when I say you're working 16 hours a day, I know this is a lot of information that you gotta keep track of, but here it is. It's the reason I was able to work, waking up at 9, staying at school until 8, 9 p.m., sometimes later, and then going home at midnight type of thing. Not the whole year, but like during crunch time, which was anywhere from 2 to 3 months long. I was doing that consistently every day. The reason that most people are able to do that, and because some people lost their mind during that process. I was starting to lose my mind, but I had a great group of friends that were all in different fields, and so it's like This is my third tip. You want to find yourself an assorted box of donuts. What do I mean by that? You could eat 3 different donuts of different flavors, and you could scarf that down. At least I can. But if I ate the same glazed donut 3 times, I'm like, I'm done. I'm like that's too much. If you're spending all your time with the same fashion people or the same, whatever field you're studying, or your regular group of friends, you kind of get in that habit, and like it's not a bad thing necessarily. But for me, I had like my fashion students, and I had my coworkers, and I had like other friends in different majors, and then I had like, I don't know, random people that I would just meet, and then I could kind of like butterfly around, and that kind of refilled me to an extent. It does take more time to see all these people, but at the end of it, you get to recharge, you get to hear different ideas and different ways of doing things, and it just really helps you out in the end. So above all else, you don't even have to find a group of different donuts. Just find good donuts, tasty donuts that you like to eat. And by that, I'm still on the metaphor of friends. Just find good friends, and you'll be okay. So here, figuring out like some little technical details and how that can apply for some designs. This doesn't necessarily have to go on a sleeve. It could go on the lips of a boot. It could go to conjoin a seam on a bag. Just different types of methods and different closures and like technical details that, for me, this is the way I design, at least. Little details kind of make up the whole design. I wanted to stop on this page. I showed it before in a previous video. This is my final lineup that I did for my thesis collection. It was in my sketchbook. It was not, a nice quality paper like most people do. It was not quality drawings of any means. It was me just sitting down. I'm like, oh, okay, this is the first look. This is the second look. Yeah, okay. How do these two go together to make the third look because of the characters in the story? All right, let me just sketch that out real quick. And then these looks, I knew. You've seen them before in the past few pages. These two I had no idea, so I was just like, okay, how do I get to the fourth look from these 3? Oh, you know what? I think I should emphasize the shoulders a little bit. Maybe, give her some darker colors, make it, a little bit moodier, because all these are pretty fun and exciting. And then the fourth look, I wanted to go all out silly pajamas. It worked out. I mean, like, good. I still enjoy the color palette today. Then I put the fabrics I wanted to use, and this was it. This was kind of what I carried with me to the end. I didn't update this. I didn't have time to update it, and I just kept going. So some pages just are, and then I was like, okay, so what does that fourth look like? Some pant ideas further. That's homework from a different course, and then figuring out what those shoulders and the studs actually look like, figuring out some of the chaps for the first look, jumping back and forth. And that's what I wanted to talk about, especially with that page here. Good enough is perfect. When you fall into the habit, and a lot of people do, of trying to perfect every detail, every design, every stitch, you start to really slow down. Once you get to 80%, it's like the 80-20 rule. Like, once you get to 80%, you can keep going. Once you focus on all the perfect parts and working and perfecting one, and then go into the other, and then go into the other, like you're gonna kill your time. And the industry is not forgiving on time. I mean, everything goes quickly. So let's try to get back there. These are some boots I was designing as well. Never got to it. I never got to finish making them. It didn't go out in the thesis, and that's okay, because I got to 80% of what I wanted to say with the story. And even though I wanted to have boots, and this happens to more people than you think, even though I wanted to have more, and I wanted to do this with the shoot, and I wanted to have this crazy production, like, if you don't get to it, you still have the majority, and you get to sleep better at night, because the people who think about perfect all the time, they go insane. So that's kind of more of a fully fleshed version of that look, and I was like, okay, this is a great look. I'm happy with it. Let's move on. And then we perfected that other jacket again. I mean, you could tell it's my favorite jacket. Um, and just some fun sketches now. Figuring out, at this point, I was really sewing them. I was sewing them in final fabric, so in the leather. So figuring out some of the more technical things that I need to do during that process, for these next few. Again, staying organized, um, just doing some more. Then I'm like, okay, I'm going insane here. What is this thesis about, anywho? Like, what am I trying to do here? Sometimes you just need to stop, because you get so focused in the minutia, like the little things, that you forget about the larger picture. And I think it's really great to kind of just sit back and like figure out. I started here with black tie. I wanted to talk about tuxedos, and I thought the whole collection was going to be very Beau Brummel, 20th century stuff. Then I got into like Western America. Then I got into like whimsical stuff, colors, um, campiness and femininity with lace and like these, I don't know anymore. But sometimes it's good to just sit back, reevaluate, because you can't evaluate and design at the same time. They're different processes. Another version of that boot that I never made. And then figuring out some more. So I'm just going to keep flipping, but I wanted to talk about my last point, because this is pretty long, which is to have fun. It's a very low effort thing, design, and you're like, oh, I mean, like, it's very hard to get into this industry, and there's a lot of pressure. But at the end of the day, if you're not having fun, it's like, what are we doing here? We're designing clothes, like, we're not solving world hunger. We're not, I mean, I wish we were, but we're not. And that kind of puts things in perspective for me. Like, it's not that serious. And when you get to the point that it's so serious, you really stop yourself and you really overthink things, and then you get paralysis from not doing anything, and it doesn't go good from there. So these last few pages are just me having fun, just coming up with bag designs that I think are cool, just having more fun drawings of random things that I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna draw this bag here, or I'm just gonna draw this scene because I think, why not, and just having a good time with it. So I realized after filming that I forgot to show the final lookbook that I made. So here it is, just a quick book that I binded because I'm very lazy and I'm not going to pay someone $400. Actually, that's kind of mean. I'm not going to pay that much money, because I'm a student, to create like this wholly fully printed book. So I did myself. So this is my lookbook of all those looks that you saw, in their final flesh, all sewn by me, and some help that I had along the way. Mostly the same things. It's these are the final processes. So I've been practicing a lot of sewing, which in turn, I mean, some people are more sketchers, some people are more sewers, some people are pattern makers, some people are, so it's really, to be a good designer, I think you have to have your foot in all of those categories, and really try to work on as many things as you can. But however, in the industry, you are expected to mostly sketch. So that's these past few weeks, I have been solely working on that, instead of, being more hands-on as you are as a student, which they don't really tell you that much in school, but that's how it is. So even if you're not the best sewer, that's okay, because you won't be doing that too much in the industry. So this was like that jacket that I was talking about. And the way that this lookbook is formatted, it is a picture book, like a children's picture book. Just having those photo shoot images, some of the ambiance, and the looks, some of the work, like this poem I wrote early in the year, and just creating a visual space of presenting all of that. Did I do this lookbook to the best of my ability? Probably not, but did I do it enough that you understand the point of the story, that you could see like the characters, you could see the products pretty clearly? I think so. And because of that, I'm happy enough that it was a good day. So that's that. I'll see you back.
Pretty sick, honestly, I gotta say. Wow, wait, do I look ripped right now? Oh, wow. Oh,
damn.
God.
You're gonna get one of these in your room now.
Yeah, you know it.
Okay.